I think of all the big tech social media platforms, X by far has the most tolerance for freedom of speech. Some people consider that a good thing. Some people consider it a bad thing.
Meet Zuby. He's more than a rapper.
He's an Oxford-educated artist, author, speaker, and fitness coach with over 2 million followers and 50 million plus video views.
Zuby's appeared on major shows like Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro, performed worldwide,
and built a movement of authenticity, mindset, and motivation.
20-year-old man and a 20-year-old woman who want to do things traditional way. They want to get married young. They want to eventually, buy a house and start a family. His mission is much greater. His mission's about, I want to serve humanity. I want to make us an interplanetary species. Know yourself, and if you're going to do something, know and understand why you're doing it.
You have so many talents, but what is your super talent?
My super talent is...
Welcome to Crypto G's. We are here today with Mr. Zuby, or Zuby, like the Spanish people said. How are you today, Zuby?
I'm doing great, man. Very blessed as always. Happy to be here.
So Zuby is an author, a rapper, entrepreneur, many talents. I know you also have a book about children that we're going to get there.
Okay.
Because I find fascinating these books.
Oh, a book for children.
For children, yeah. Not about children,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
children. But let's go back so people understand who you are. But before anything else, I want to tell everybody everything that we're going to say today is not financial advice. Do your own research. It's our personal opinions. And yeah, let's kick off. So thank you so much for coming to the show. The first thing that I heard about you, it was through my friend Mauricio, Mr. M podcast. And you just had interviewed Elon Musk 1 week before he interviewed you. So before we jump into the Elon Musk experience, let's call it like that, let's talk about Zuby. You have so many talents, but what is your super talent?
My super talent is being able to articulate what hundreds of millions or billions of people are thinking in a concise and precise way that most people would not be able to articulate it or write it.
Wow.
Whether that's in the form of music, in the form of speaking, in the form of text, whatever it may be. I'd say my mega talent is the gift of communication and being able to distill ideas.
That's a good, and you have an amazing voice, so that helps a lot.
Thank you.
So we're going to speak today about technology, fitness, content creation, health, mental health, let's call it like that, about everything else.
Okay.
But let's start with this topic that's very fascinating for everybody, that podcast with Elon Musk, right? I bet everybody asks you, how was it, how you ended up reaching out? Did he reach out to you, or how ended up happening? Because as a podcaster, everybody want to have him in the show, but when things come organically, it's even better, right?
Yeah, it was definitely organic. So I've been an Elon Musk fan, follower to some degree for over a decade, for sure. He's someone who, in this earthly realm, who I admire. I think he's one of the most fascinating and brilliant human beings of our time and of all times. And let me get my timings right. So late 2022, when the app now known as X was still called Twitter, before he'd bought it, I noticed that he had started to reply to some of my tweets. So at this time, I don't know, I think I had approaching 1 million followers at the time. I don't think I'd yet hit 1 million. But I just started noticing like other people were commenting. I'm looking through my comments and sometimes I just see Elon Musk in there responding. Sometimes just with an emoji, sometimes with a, just, yep, I agree, or cool, or just, sometimes 1 word, 2 words. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm on his radar. And then early 2023, one of my friends actually messaged me on WhatsApp and just asked me, hey, how long has Elon been following you? And I was like, Elon follows me. I didn't even know. And I went on his profile on Twitter and it had, the follows you. And he was only following me, I think, 280, 290 people at the time. So I was one of the 300 or so people that he'd chosen to follow of the hundreds of millions of people on the app. And then actually the following day, he sent me a DM.
Wow.
And he was actually asking me basically to let him know about, so this is when I think he'd bought Twitter at this time. And he was looking for feedback from people. I've been on the app since 2009, and in the past I'd suggested things that they could do to make it better and so on. So he was just like, yeah, any ideas you have, any issues you see, something, send me a message. And then I mentioned to him, I was just like, yeah, sure, no problem. Also, by the way, I have a podcast. It's called Real Talk with Zuby. I'd love to have you on it sometime.
I would come to Real Talk with Zuby.
Yeah.
How we do en español?
En español.
Las charlas reales con Zuby.
Yeah. So he replied, sure.
Wow.
Same way I reply to podcasts when someone asks me if they can be on, if I want to do it. And so I was like, okay, cool. I was in the UK at the time.
Yeah.
He was in the States, and I just said, okay, great. Next time I'm in the US, I'm sure obviously he's busy. He's traveling a lot. I was like, cool. Like, I'll be flexible, whatever works for you. If I need to travel for it, we'll make it happen. And then a couple months down the line, I was in the USA for some events, and I reached back out to him and sent him. We were still messaging back and forth,
just trying to coordinate.
Yeah. Well, even just chatting in general.
Yeah. Okay.
But then when the time came, it was just a matter of logistics. It was just a matter of when and where, and we had to postpone it for about 2 weeks. We had a certain date.
Yeah.
Decided to do it in San Francisco, and then I think something came up, and he had to travel.
So rocket space or something like that.
I don't know. He had to go to China or to Mars or something, and so it got delayed at some point. But then, cool, we locked down another date, and it was just a matter of logistics. I went over to San Francisco, and we made it happen.
And it was cool, or do you have to go through process and sign papers and all of that?
It was easy.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
It was easy. But I think also because it's me.
And it's organic.
So it's organic. At this point, he'd been following me for several months. We've had conversations. He knows he's in friendly territory.
Yeah.
I'm not some journalist who's trying to do a gotcha or trying to, manipulate him in some type of way or anything like that. I just want to have a conversation with him. We were already on friendly terms, even though we hadn't met each other.
Amazing.
And then when I met him in person, it was
friends from
many
years.
It was like meeting. He was as happy to meet me as I was to meet him.
Wow.
So that was cool, and it was a great conversation. Millions of people have listened to it and enjoyed it, and I hope in the future we're able to do a follow-up episode. That would be great.
I bet it will happen.
That'd be cool.
So before talking about, I want to talk about a lot of stuff today about free speech, Black Lives Matter, health, and all of that. Let's talk about Twitter, because you reached 1 million of followers. It took a long time, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember, you were also in Clubhouse or no?
Not very heavily. I have got an account there.
Yeah.
And I've used it probably for a grand total of maybe 6 to 8 hours. But I was never I was never a big Clubhouse person during the time when it was really rising and growing during the time of the lockdowns and all that. I had a lot of people who were telling me about it, and a few friends invited me to it, so I joined. But it's never something that I built a big following on.
So the reason why I call it Clubhouse is because when the application went live, and I remember Elon jumped for a bit in the application, Mario was there as well. I was doing a lot of rooms in Spanish. I have that La Mesa Redonda, the round table. Okay. And then I met Mario Nafalder back like long time ago. And then he put together these massive rooms, and then he go shadow ban and cancel, and they kick him out from the room, and then he ended up on Twitter.
Okay.
So how you perceive, because I know Twitter changed a lot, or X, let's call it like that. But before Elon, also, I think so, when people realized Clubhouse was a good room, was a good application, they also realized they could come, and then when they create the spaces, Twitter spaces, the whole narrative changed. Were you also very active in Twitter spaces before Elon bought it or no?
Not heavily. I did a few. I hosted a few and I participated in a few, but not, to this day, I've done maybe in total, I've participated in maybe about 10.
Yes.
Whether that's Twitter spaces or X spaces, I've maybe done around 10. I know some people do them very, very frequently.
Yes.
That hasn't been the case for me. I think probably I underutilize it, and I could be doing more on there. But I enjoy it. I like the format. I think it's cool. I've just thus far haven't done a huge amount of them, but I've done a few.
And I remember watching your podcast with Mauricio and Elon as well. And you talk a lot about free speech.
Yeah.
You're an advocate. The reason why I talk about Mario Naval is because he got canceled in Clubhouse by a billionaire. That was the whole story. And then they kicked him out. Then he joined Twitter, X. And then actually when CryptoGeeks started in October 2020, what year are we now? 2022, when FTX happened, the team reached out, Mario team said, hey, Andres, can you help us to find somebody for an exchange?
Okay.
And because I have so many good friends of mine that work for exchanges or directors, so I have found somebody, I won't mention it now, but I brought her to the show, and that's when the whole team blew up. It was like whistleblower, different exchanges, they knew all of that stuff. And then since then, Mario blew up, but also he had the same situation that you had, like he became very close with Elon Musk and all of that. So going to the question about free speech, so do you believe we have free speech in social media or only on X? Because I'm very bullish into Instagram. That's where I grew nicely, you know. But I think so Twitter is one of those platforms that people don't understand, but when you understand it, you feel comfortable to use it even more.
Yeah. I think of all the big tech social media platforms, X by far has the most tolerance for freedom of speech. Some people consider that a good thing. Some people consider it a bad thing. I think in reality, like the concept of freedom, it's freedom of speech itself. It is mostly, I believe it's a massive net positive, but it also has its trade-offs. That's just the reality of pretty much everything in life, not just things within the realm of society and culture and politics, but I think in life in general, it's important for all adults to know and to realize, and I don't think it's drilled home enough, that basically every single choice and decision is a matter of trade-offs. Every decision that you make by choosing to marry this person, you're choosing to not marry all the billions of others. Okay? By choosing to live in this city or this country, you are choosing not to live in all of the other thousands of cities or places or all the other hundreds of countries. By choosing to take this career or this job, you are closing the door to all these other options. If you decide to listen to this podcast right now, it means you're not listening to all the other podcasts that exist. So life is full of trade-offs. And I think that when it comes to freedom of speech, people like to think of things as being all upside or all downside. It's not that binary. Okay. Freedom of speech does have potential downsides for a lot of people. This is part of the reason why actually in most of the world outside the USA, even from a legal perspective, they typically have certain things that where there isn't freedom of speech. In some nations, it's religion. In some, it's criticism of the government. In some, it's criticism or usage of just certain language that may apply to certain individuals or certain groups or so on. They're just like, look, if you are going to, you can't target or attack this group, or look, just, these are where the boundaries are. Even in the USA, which has the most freedom of speech enshrined within its laws, within its constitution, there are still some limitations. For example, calls for violence, right? Or direct incitement to violence. Even in the USA, they're like, no, we think there should be a limitation on that because it's not worth it. It puts people at actual risk of physical harm and danger. So in different nations and different places, they draw those lines differently. And even within the world of social media, where you have these individual companies and individual platforms, they all have different rules. X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they don't all have the same rules. There's something you can say on this platform, but if you put that same post on another one, it will get censored or your account will be banned. There's some things that, hey, on Rumble, you can talk about this topic and you can say this and you can go, kind of say whatever you want. And then on YouTube, they'll pick it up on it and say, no, you can't do that. But then YouTube, for example, YouTube is far more liberal in terms of freedom of speech than, say, radio or television. Okay, if you're on radio, daytime radio or daytime television, you can't swear. You can't use
Yeah, you
profanity, right? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
and that's known. That's like, no, you can't be a daytime radio host and you're there throwing all these cuss words around, right? You'll be kicked off air within minutes. You won't even be able to finish your show. But then if you're on YouTube,
You can do whatever.
you can say all that. And then if you're on Rumble, you can say even more. And then if you have maybe your own private hosted platform, you can say even more. So that's just the reality of how it works.
Yeah.
And in terms of what is considered offensive or not, I think there are some broad categories where virtually everybody would agree that,
Yeah.
okay, this is genuinely offensive or this is past the line. But beyond that, it's extraordinarily subjective to people,
Yeah.
which is part of the reason why I support, as a broad concept, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Because once you try to have individuals or groups be the arbiter of what is and what is not offensive, or what is and what's information and what's misinformation and disinformation and all that, it comes down to individual sensitivities, beliefs, proclivities. Everyone has different sensitivities. There can be something that someone says, it could even be a joke. And
Good dude. You say something like that, dude? Good dude. You go canceling.
Oh, okay, dude.
Okay, dude.
Okay,
You go cancel.
dude. Oh, that was just silly. That's a whole different story. But there can be something that you find highly offensive, and then I hear it and I don't, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Depending on people's beliefs, depending on their background, depending on how they're raised, even just their personality. Some people are very, very sensitive, and even just something that's a little bit rude, they don't want to hear it, they don't like it. Whereas other people have a huge tolerance for it. So I'm okay with things and people and media existing in this world that I don't like, or I may find distasteful, or I might even find outright offensive. I'm not on some campaign to try to ban it all. If I don't like it, I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
I don't consume it. Imagine going through like the entire library of Spotify or Apple or YouTube, and you are find every single thing that you personally don't like. You want to, we need to ban, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't,
Yeah.
you can't do it. And then this other person has a different opinion. This person has a different opinion. And so you need to have, the best you can do is to have some clear boundaries, particularly if you're a social media platform, because anyone who thinks about it properly, it's not realistic to expect social media platforms that are operating across hundreds of different jurisdictions to be able to just allow everything, right? Some people have this absolutist perspective, which they think should apply to the social media platforms. And it's like, look, they have shareholders, they have advertising partners. It's not unreasonable for YouTube to have certain things that they're like, okay, we don't want this particular thing on our platform. I'll give you a great example. X allows pornography.
Wow.
Facebook does not. Instagram does not. YouTube does not. Rumble does not. There's a lot of people who don't think that X should allow it. There's tons of people every single day who are like, hey, ban porn from X. Like, why has this been the case? But it's been the case since the inception of Twitter. It's always been allowed.
Wow.
It's always been the only big tech social media platform where pornography is allowed.
Insane.
And I don't really know why they made that decision. Some people would say, hey, well, if it's legal, it should be allowed. Other people are like, well, no, like I don't want to be on my platform, or my kid is on this platform, and suddenly they're seeing these types of images and videos and things. So maybe that's in itself is a great example of where people draw those lines differently. And some people would say, hey, that doesn't even fall into speech, because that's not necessarily freedom of speech or expression. And so it's a bit more complicated than I think most people would like to believe. I think people like to go all the way on this one and just say, just allow everything, right? And then other people want to go here and they want to be very, very highly censored and massively restrictive. And that actually stifles conversation, and it stifles ideas, and it creates a sense of fear and uncertainty, especially if people don't even know where the lines are, where they're not even sure, what can I say and what can't I? And that was a big part of the problem with not just Twitter, but the social media platforms in general until a couple of years ago, because it was very, very unclear. You brought up the okay dude thing. Yeah. I mean, I've seen people get their accounts deleted and suspended for all sorts of like very innocuous, silly things. Yeah. Sometimes someone does something and it's like, okay, you can really see how this crossed the line. But then there's other ones where it's something completely innocuous, something harmless, something that's not even offensive to 99% of people, and whoever was sitting there in San Francisco or wherever they are, decided, nope, I'm going to ban that person. And it might be because they don't like their politics, they don't like their viewpoints or something. And once you're in that territory, I think it's dangerous.
Let me ask you a question just for content creators, because obviously you build your personal brand based on your opinions and what you think and what you respect and what you love, right? For example, for me, because I come from Colombia, and I was brought up in the 90s in the cartel drugs, and I've seen how journalists got killed for opinions. Actually, I have a very good friend of mine. Her dad got killed by one of the cartels because he was a journalist. For me as a content creator, for example, that's why I'm probably not too active in Twitter, because I always think about my family in Colombia. What I would say this, maybe somebody will take it the wrong time. For example, I have myself haters in Colombia, and I have people that don't connect with my idea because I'm in crypto, right? But I remember you say something really nice in Mauricio's podcast. You say, yeah, you have haters, you have people that don't agree with you, but on the other side, you have people that love what you're doing, you're inspiring people. So my question is, what tip would you give, regardless of the nationality or the background, to a new content creator, especially on X, to become more themselves, to stop being scared, to have fear about speaking their mind up. Obviously doing it in an ethical way, or in a way that's not going to affect people. What top 2 tips that you will give to a new content creator? Because you go to 1 million followers on X based on pure heart or what you think.
Organically.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for people to know themselves. And I think we live in a world where a lot of people don't actually know themselves very well. They're running mostly on autopilot. They don't know why they believe what they believe. They don't know why they're motivated or not motivated to do the things they do or don't do. They don't know what their own principles and values are, which is why they blow with the wind. When the wind is blowing this way, they go with it. When it's blowing that way, they go with it. They don't stand firm in their values and principles because their values or principles are just whatever is expedient at the time, or whatever is comfortable, or whatever avoids conflict, or whatever makes me look like a good person, or whatever is trendy. And that's a huge percentage of people. And I don't say that to be disparaging. That's just the reality of it. People who are very firm and clear about their beliefs, their principles, their values, and why they hold them. That's a minority of people. And I think downstream from that is knowing and understanding why you do the things you do. What is your mission? What is your purpose? Not what your parents told you to do, not what society pressured upon you, not what just you're seeing other people doing, so you go and do the same thing. Like, what is your hierarchy of values and priorities, and what's your mission and purpose? If you are even going on social media, you use the term content creator. Why are you a content creator? What is the content you're even creating? Who are you trying to serve? Who are you trying to help? And if the answer is yourself, that's not a good answer. Okay, what is the value in what you're putting out there? Who are you helping? Why are you helping them? And if you can answer those questions well, I think a lot of other stuff just falls into place, because you'll know. I mean, do you even need to speak on certain topics, right? So I'm someone who's known for being pretty outspoken publicly and for not being afraid to share my views and opinions, whether it's on a podcast or it's on social media or a video, whatever it is. But even then, I don't feel compelled to speak on everything. I don't even feel compelled to speak about most things. Most things that are happening in the world, or most things that exist, I don't necessarily talk about, because I might not be informed. It might not be lined up with my mission. I may not feel like I have anything interesting or valuable to add to the conversation. I may just not think it's, what I have to say is all that interesting. But in those areas that I do, if I do feel compelled to speak about something, it's because I've thought it through and I feel like I have something of value to add to that conversation. And in my mind, I've weighed up the pros and the cons and so on. Everyone's in a different lane. Not everybody is, most people are not content creators publicly, and most people should not be. Right? Like, most people, you don't need everyone in the world with a podcast. Too many people, I see people on podcasts, I'm like, what? This person has nothing to say. Why do they even have a podcast, right? And look, and people are free to do what they want, but I just think that it's important to think of why you're doing it. And if you really thought about that well and it's in line with your mission, the fear gets snuffed out.
Okay.
Because it's not, I feel an ethical duty to say the things I say.
Okay.
And to do the things I do. Because the world in some small way, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way, is worse off if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm failing to serve and help the people that I could be helping or serving. I've been given a certain combination of personality and background and experiences and talents and so on, where I can use those in a specific way to reach and help the world. Yeah. That's not everyone's lane. Someone can be a mechanic. Some people are doctors. Some people are dentists. Some people play football. Some people are nurses. I don't do any of those jobs, but we absolutely need the people who do, right? What I do, I mean, imagine if everyone in the world tried to do what everything would fall apart, right? How many rappers, podcasters, public speakers, coaches, I love what I do. And I think I offer a lot of value to the world, but I just think you have to kind of get in where you fit in. So I don't think that if you're kind of you don't feel that compelled in that direction, I want to kind of warn people that you don't have to do what we are doing right now in order to have an impact. Yeah. It doesn't have to be public and loud and you're trying to get thousands or millions of followers or views or so on. There's a very small minority of people who, even if they try, are ever even going to do that. But I think you get in where you fit in and you try to make an impact within your locus of control. This is why I talk a lot about personal responsibility and self-improvement, right? Start with yourself. And then from there, your friends, your family, your relationships, your health, all the things you have some control over, do your best within that realm. And if that's quote unquote all you do, you've done a freaking awesome job. Okay. If someone has just gone out there and they live a quiet life and they've raised wonderful children and they're an asset to their community and they work a job and they help people and so that's awesome. You know, I think people get gassed up in this social media world now where so many people think I have to be an influencer. I have to be a YouTuber. I have to be and there are some people who are called to that and they should do it. Yeah. But it's a tiny, tiny percent. And so I don't want people to, get the sense that, I have to take that lane in order to be valuable or in order for society to care about me or to make an impact or so on. There's so many ways that you can make a huge and positive impact on the world. I would argue that most of the people who make the biggest and most positive impact in the world, we don't even know who they are.
We probably don't.
We don't know who they are. Okay. I don't know who wired up the electronics of this building and created the building itself and who made the cars that we drive and built the roads and all the food that we eat. There's farmers, there's logistics, there's truckers, there's so many people. Yes. We don't even know who they are.
We don't know. Yeah.
We don't know who they are. The people, all the good people we know, the people who raised them, the teachers who taught them, the parents who most of this is quiet.
Yes.
Most of it is quiet. So,
or the mothers that raised the
people.
Yes.
Exactly. They're under celebrated, they're under recognized, and maybe they don't seek that acclaim, and that's great. But I just think it's important for people to, coming back to what I was saying earlier, just know yourself, and if you're going to do something, know and understand why you're doing it, and don't do it in self-service. Mm-hmm. Even as a tip for success or for building an audience or a personal brand, even though I don't like that term, the best way to do it is to serve others. So the people who do it best, they're not focused on themselves. Elon Musk is not the richest man in the world because he intentionally seeks to be the richest man in the world and to just make a bunch of money and buy as many yachts and I think he owns 0 yachts and 0 Lambos, right? Yeah, he could buy all of them that he wants, but his mission is much greater. His mission's about, I want to serve humanity. I want to make us an interplanetary species. I want to revolutionize the car industry and create environmentally friendly vehicles and to change the way we use energy and to help blind people to be able to see and lame people to be able to walk and extend the human lifespan. His vision is, none of it is me. Mm-hmm. And most people who achieve something great, it's it's in service to other people. If you think of like lots of the best known, even an entertainer, it could be a singer who's popular amongst millions of people. They're not just like, yeah, I just make music for me. No, I want to entertain other people. I enjoy making music and I want to share my creativity. I have a special, unique talent, which I can share with people, and thousands or millions can enjoy my performances and they can enjoy my songs and they can find some motivation in my music. And maybe they get married and they want to play my song at their wedding. Like all of this is a value. A doctor, a mechanic, an electrician, any of these jobs that people are doing day to day, it's in service to other people. It's all in service to other people. So I think when people can kind of get out of themselves and their own selfishness a bit, then that really actually just, it lights a massive fire. Good. And ironically, it leads to more success because the more people you help, the more people you positively impact, the more people who are like, man, that guy or that gal, like, ooh, man, like they're adding value to my life in some way. I'm learning so much from them, or I'm getting so much inspiration from them, or they're entertaining me. Like that in itself, I mean, if you can achieve that, then the success part or the monetization part is almost like a byproduct.
Okay, let's go from one point that is people that just getting started and they want to learn something about like what you just said. You need to know about yourselves in order that you can become that person that you want to be, right? Now, but there is our spectrum.
Sure.
I will tell you what happened. I have a friend in the UK. The son of my friend, he started his YouTube channel about 5 years ago, and now he reached 100,000 subscribers, right? So 15 years old, over the moon. I have my son as well. He's 10 years old, and he's following everybody, you know. He loves Mr. Beast. He wants to be content creator. He keep asking me, Andres, can I be part of your team, etc., etc. But then we also have another content creators that became so popular or so famous or so influential in a short period of time, like for example Andrew Tate, that the other spectrum of the radio, you know, because his overconfidence, he took his mind out and he ended up in jail. What are your thoughts about that kind of content creators or personalities, you know, and especially now that X reopened the freedom of speech? I want to understand what are your thoughts about somebody like Andrew and Tristan Tate, that they use the power of influence not only to, you know, connect with people, but also to build a massive wealth of affiliates on whatever they do.
I feel like the question's a little bit too broad for me to answer well.
Okay.
Can you narrow?
Yeah. What do you
be
think?
A little more
okay.
precise?
So what do you think? Like, do you think is they're taking advantage of the freedom of speech just to create money for themselves?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is I've been aware of both of them since 2018, actually. Andrew was actually the fourth ever guest on my podcast. January 2019 was the first time we recorded together. And I think I had Tristan on in 2020. I've done 2 podcasts with Andrew and one with Tristan. And I've met them off camera as well. So I'd say, I mean, their actual rise might have looked super fast.
Okay.
But it's not in the same way someone might have discovered me in 2019 or 2020 and they don't realize, you discovered me more than 10 years after I've been putting stuff out into the world. Do I think they're taking advantage of it? I mean, in the same way anyone else is. I mean, you could make an argument that any online personality is taking advantage of the tools at our disposal. That's not inherently something that's positive or negative. In terms of their message or their messaging, boy, like there's a lot that's out there. There's a lot of stuff that I think is very positive. There's a lot of stuff that I think is destructive.
Yeah.
They're individuals.
Yeah.
And I'm personally a fan of what I say is like eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Okay.
Meaning that if there is someone out there, whether they're big, small, controversial, not controversial, whatever side they're on, there are people who you don't need to imbibe all of someone's messaging.
Yeah.
Okay. So prior to any controversy with these particular individuals, people have been for decades having conversations about the content in movies, in video games, in rap music, in this TV show, in this whatever. These conversations rage on until this day. This has been happening since the 80s at least, but even earlier, right? Even as far as I know, even when Elvis came out, people were having debates around, is it too raunchy, so on. So, human beings are always like this. But what I would say is that there is no person on this planet who I agree with 100% on everything.
Okay.
That person does not exist. Not even the closest people in the world to me, but closest, my most loved ones. I'm sure with your own family members,
with my wife,
with your own wife, you do not agree on 100% of everything. It does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even 100% agree with everything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There could be something I thought a few weeks ago or a couple hours ago, let alone a few years ago, and I look back on it and I'm like, I've changed my mind on that.
True.
I don't think that's true. Or sometimes we even know something and we believe something and we still do the wrong thing. We might know in our heads logically what is right. Okay, you have, I don't know, you're opening a menu and you're like, I'm on the healthy eating plan, and you're saying, oh man, I've got the double bacon cheeseburgers, whatever, with fries and ice cream. And then there's, I could have the chicken salad with the quinoa, and that would be more healthy. And you're like, I know this is more healthy, but I want the right?
Of course, you want the gravy, the chicken.
Exactly. So even when we ourselves, even quite disciplined people, even sometimes when you know what is the better option, sometimes we still choose to, not do what is right. So the point I'm generally making here is, I think we have to, people have such strong feelings about this. But for me personally, I have a belief that I can learn something from anyone.
Okay.
And agreeing with 10% or 20% or 50% or even 90% of someone's message or even their actions doesn't mean that I have to agree with the part that I don't. Mm-hmm. Human beings are not just these automatons. I think a lot of the fear that people have when it comes to certain online influencers and so on is like, oh my gosh, like, young people are they're going to just hear this and they're just going to copy exactly everything this person says and does. This was the fear with video games. Oh my gosh, if my son plays GTA, he's going to run outside and start shooting guns and pulling people out of their cars. And we know in reality, this is not what happens, right? If that was the reality, we live in a really terrible world because millions of people play video games, millions of people listen to all sorts of music and so on. And we're seeing in reality, okay, maybe there can be some influence. I won't deny that. But there are lots of influential factors, and people can separate the wheat from the chaff to some degree, right? If I say 10 things on this podcast that someone likes and I say 3 they disagree with, cool. Take what's useful.
Yeah.
Take the stuff that's helpful or you find motivational or you find insightful. If there's something that you think, no, I totally disagree with him on that, cool. That's fine. Maybe we can have a conversation with that or maybe not. At the minimum, you're getting a different perspective and it's making you think. So yeah, that's how I kind of view the overall topic. And it's not about any particular individual.
Okay.
I just think that as an adult in a world of 8 billion people and 4 billion of them on social media, like you have to accept that, look, there's going to be people I like, there's going to be people I don't like, there's going to be people I agree with, disagree with, even the people I agree with. Sometimes I'm going to disagree with them. And I think if you exist in the real world, we already know that even outside of digital media, this is true. We all have, arguments and disagreements with our family members, our closest friends, our significant others. And that's just how life goes.
I like, for example, from the Tay brothers, they are very, very pro about the masculinity.
Yeah.
You have to be, I've been watching them for a long time as well. And I think so they have done remarkable things with some of their audience, Mm-hmm. I follow them because I like the role that they take on men's mental health and physical, and men has to provide.
Yes.
And I believe that, obviously, I'm from Colombia,
Mm-hmm.
we're very that way. But also, this is a question that my team really want me to ask you.
Okay.
So you've been vocal about the importance of masculinity in today's society, right? So, and this is very important. What challenge do you believe modern men face, and how they can embrace positive masculinity amidst changing society, like now it was hard before, but I think so now we're leveling up.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I think the biggest challenge for young men, in summary, is not being clear of what their purpose is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So people have all sorts of ideas on gender roles.
Yes.
And whether that dynamic was better now or whether it was better at some point in history. People can debate that forever. They're never all going to agree. However, when it comes to gender roles, I think you can certainly say that for most of human history, boys and young men knew what their role and place in society was and what the expectations were. And girls and young women going into adulthood, they also knew what their roles were and what the expectations were.
Yes.
Right. Some people will say, oh, well, that was too rigid. And what if a woman wants to do this? And what if a man wants to do that? Of course, everyone's an individual. The individual is the ultimate minority. But I think when you have societies, and you still have many societies and cultures where that delineation is clear, you don't get that much confusion, right? A man, okay, I'm a man. My role is to summarize, protect, provide, and preside. These are pretty broad buckets, but generally speaking, this is my job. As a woman, maybe your job is more, mothering, nurturing, raising a family, looking after the home and the domestic things inside of it, more of the sort of social and cultural power, men more of the physical and political power, let's call it that way. And it's a very, very modern and recent thing for these roles to even have the ability to be challenged. A lot of it is driven by technology, everything from the birth control pill to the internet and social media and computers, right? It's flattened the differences between the sexes in terms of the capabilities and in terms of the absolute needs. The further away you are from primal nature, the more you can get away with blurring or eliminating the gender differences. Okay? As soon as there's an emergency, or as soon as, I don't know, there's a plane crash and 100 men and 100 women are stuck on some... As soon as that happens, boom, they split right back into the gender roles.
Yes.
Okay, the closer you are, the harder survival is. This is why in more developing countries, the line between men and women in terms of the gender roles is much more, it remains much more distinct and clear and separated. Yeah. Whereas in more modern societies with lots of technology and they're economically prosperous and survival is so easy that more people are fat than starving, then it gets squished. But what also happens with that is it affects both sexes differently. And there's some consequences that I think are more unique to men, and there's some consequences that are more unique to women. And what happens with the blurring, what happens with the elimination of the polarity as well between the masculine and the feminine is it can create resentment for sure. We see a lot of that. Yeah, it creates a lot of confusion. And also it makes each sex less attractive to each other. Because if you are a masculine man, you are broadly speaking, you're going to be more attracted to a feminine woman. You're more attracted to the feminine traits. You don't want to date a woman who's like another man, who's like one of your bros. Just like if you're a woman who is more feminine in that sense, there's a natural polarity to a man who's more obviously and traditionally masculine. Even the most ardent feminist typically doesn't want to date a feminist man. She still wants, this is why they have this psychosis in their head, because they're fighting against their biology all of the time. The society, their doctrine, their culture is telling them, oh no, like I should want a man who's more effeminate and soft and vulnerable and emotional in whatever language they use. But in reality, primally, they're still drawn to a man who's more typically masculine, whether he's a good man or not. And that's just, I always say, like, you can't really beat biology. Biology biology is so powerful, and we haven't suddenly, in the last 60 years, our biology is not altered. We have the same biology as our grandparents, great-grandparents, great, like going back thousands and thousands of years. So yeah, society develops, social conventions change, technology changes, but at a baseline, it stays the same. And so I think for a lot of young men and young women to some degree, just knowing what you're meant to be doing is confusing because Western societies in particular, the messaging is so mixed. If you're a 20-year-old man growing up right now or an 18-year-old man, and in the same day you're hearing, man up, where are all the good men? We need masculinity. A man should be strong. A man should protect and provide. And then 2 seconds later, you're hearing men need to step down and men need to make more space for women and the future is female and there's toxic masculinity and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait, you're being told on one hand, you're an oppressor. Just by being a man, there's this thing called the patriarchy and you're just born into it. And there's this inherent misogyny and sexism. But then at the same time, you're looking at things and you're like, wait, women are getting more than 60% of the university degrees. And actually like around me, the women are out earning the men in the city that I live in and this and it's just like, what am I supposed to do here? Am I meant to take that traditional path and, okay, I'm going to build my resources. I'm going to be skilled. I'm going to learn to protect and provide and so on. But wait, women are saying that some of them are saying they don't even need me. Oh, we don't even need men. What? Whoa. Okay. So on one hand, you're hearing, where are all the good men gone? 2 seconds later, we don't even need men, or men are toxic, or this masculinity is bad or something. And so I think it's very confusing. And for young women, on one hand, they're being told to be more traditional and feminine and pure and so on. And then on the other hand, it's the boss girl stuff and you just go and do it. Basically like go and live like a type A man. Yeah. Chase your career, get your degree, make sure you have your own money, blah, blah, but don't rely on any man. So like it's confusing. It's confusing for both sexes and they're kind of like, sure, you can still navigate your way through this and doing things the traditional way absolutely still works. But even for the people, what's messed up is even for the people who would want to pursue that path, it's more difficult now than it used to be. Not just because of the mixed messaging, but also due to things like economic factors. So say, for example, let's say 50 years ago, there was a 20-year-old man and a 20-year-old woman who want to do things the traditional way. They want to get married young. They want to eventually, buy a house and start a family.
My parents, for example.
Yes, yes. Firstly, there's lots of people in the society who want the same thing. Yes. So finding that man or finding that woman isn't too difficult. And you're not, getting battered by all this toxic stuff on social media or feeling like you have a billion options because you can swipe through all these people and so on. So it was simpler to do. And then even from an economic standpoint, most likely you could just have a sole breadwinner, right? Just the man needs to work. And just with that one income, you can have a family of 4, 5, 6, 7, 10.
12 in my
12. Okay,
my
right?
grandma, 12.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, my grandma's had 11 and 8 children.
We have like a football team, each other.
Exactly. So you could do it. It made economic sense. Yeah. It made social sense, cultural sense. Like it was more aligned. Whereas now there's still, fewer of them, but there's still that 20-year-old man and 20-year-old woman, and they want to get married and start a family. But let's say they're in the UK or the US and they don't have they're not from a rich family or something like that. Like it is objectively much more difficult to achieve. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it can't be done. I've seen people do it, but there are so many forces working against it that not as many people want it and people are being pushed in all these different directions, but even for those people who do, it's much, much harder to achieve. Yeah. Maybe before you may have been able to buy a house when you were 23 or 24.
No, it's impossible.
And now you might have to wait until you're 33 or you're 34.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, right? Maybe even 43 or 44 to kind of be in that same position. So I just think all of these factors and all of them happening at the same time and happening so quickly, the changes in religious belief, the changes in culture and technology, just all of it. And we're still only scratching the surface. I just think all of these things combined, it makes it very difficult. Like I have a lot of sympathy for young men growing up now. And I also have a lot of sympathy for the young women because I just don't think it's ever been so confusing.
It's confusing.
Yeah, I think it's genuinely confusing for them.
We were lucky, our generation.
In a way.
In a way,
In
we
a
were
way.
the last generation that didn't have technology.
Yeah, we were lucky in a way, but even in our generation and younger, there's also the cascading elements. And when I
Yes.
say that, I mean talking about the family you come from.
Yes.
So, okay, let me just speak very frankly. If you go back not so long ago, or even in many parts of the world, like 95% of marriages ended in death. Now in the USA, something like 50% end in divorce.
Mm.
And that has a cascading effect. So it means that as time goes on, more and more people are growing up with parents who didn't stay together or coming from some type of broken home, millions of people growing up with just single mothers and they haven't even had the father in the picture, all of these scenarios, and that affects people. So even when they become adults, people tend to consider normal whatever they grew up with. So there are entire communities where having a dad is weird. Even having a dad, like there's people who grow up, like I've talked to people. So where I grew up, I'm very blessed. My parents have been married almost 50 years. Most of my friends' parents have been married for decades and decades.
Amazing.
Where I grew up, like pretty much almost like 100% intact families. So for me to recognize that and normal and to model it and to believe that it's possible is not so difficult for me. But if you are someone who grew up, for example, and let's say your parents divorced and your grandparents divorced and your uncles divorced and your aunts divorced and your friends around you growing up, all of them except one couple, like all of them, then even the belief that, hey, I can go out there and I can, find a woman, I can love her. Even the belief that that's achievable for a lot of people. Of course, again, I'm speaking generally. There's always people who buck the trend. But for a lot of those people, they're just like, I mean, is that even, they don't even kind of think it's possible. They're just like, well, I've seen all of these examples and it doesn't seem like this even works. Even if I wanted to do it, what's the point? So I think this is part of why. There's many factors, but it's part of why you're increasingly having young men and young women almost just checking out. Not even just checking out of marriage, but checking out of dating, not wanting to even really interact that much with the opposite sex, maybe for a hookup or something, but let alone the idea of like bringing children into the world and being able to raise them and
living together.
Then coming back to the inflation's crazy. Like, how is even if someone's like, yeah, I'd love to do that, but how do I even afford it? How do I afford it? And, all the messaging that some men are getting is like, well, just, be a man and step up and provide. And it's like, that's not technically wrong.
Yeah.
Technically, it's correct, but people need to recognize that that is not as easy and simple for the average man as it used to be. Before, being an average man was enough. Now it's like, okay, my advice to you, young men, is you have to be above average in like everything. But how can everybody be above average? It doesn't make sense. You see what I mean?
Yes,
so
yes.
If one young man comes up to me, a 16-year-old, and is like, all right, Zuby, I like your stuff. What's your advice? And I'm like, man, you got to hit the gym. You got to get in the top 10% of fitness, get in the top 10% of income earners, get in the top 10% of personality and character.
Create content.
Yeah, like even if you're not a content creator, I'm just like, man, and try to max out your stats in all of these things. And that advice, I believe, is correct. Yeah. But I do recognize that averages exist and not everyone can be definitionally above average.
Yeah.
And if women's expectations are so high that if the average woman is not even attracted to the average man, we have a math problem. We have a math problem where it's like, okay, well, this woman is here, but her expectations are way up here. And it just, it causes a lot of misery for both sexes. And then I think on top of this, and maybe this is downstream of some of the things we've already talked about, I do think a lot of young men are lonely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of loneliness. I don't know, it's a kind of chicken and egg thing, but I think there's a lot of loneliness and there's a lot of retreating into, what would I call it, sedation.
Yeah.
Whether some of those sedations could be playing tons of video games, spending huge amounts of times on social media, watching a bunch of pornography, getting involved in, drinking a lot, doing drugs, whatever, just escaping, some form of escapism. And, reality is too painful. So I need to numb myself to it because, it's more comfortable being numbed than being in reality. So I think, I think it's tough. I think it's tough. It's weird because in some ways life is a lot easier than it ever has been. But with that, it's brought in a whole bunch of new problems. I think that when people are genuinely just striving to survive against nature and against the elements, then you don't need to have these debates and conversations, and you don't have all these ideologies. In a society where people are struggling to survive, nobody would even dare to ask the question, do we even need one of the sexes? Like, that's insane to me. Like, if someone were to be like, do we even need women? Like, bro, what's wrong with you? Like, what an insane, what delusion are you living in that you even ask that question? Of course we need women. Who do you think birthed all of us to begin with? But you've got people who are seriously like, oh, do we need men? Yeah, you can see articles online. Is this the end of men? Do we need men? I'm like, what society?
Who is building who is in the cranes?
Who's building everything?
Who is catching fires?
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. Comfort itself can create a whole host of new problems individually and collectively. For the first time in human history, Andres, think about this. For the first time ever, obesity is a bigger global problem and health risk than starvation.
Wow. I didn't know that.
It's the first time ever. There are more obese people than hungry people.
Hungry people. That's insane.
For the first time ever. So all of the thousands of years humans have existed, hunger, starvation has always been.
Yes.
And obesity didn't even used to exist, basically. But there were hundreds of millions, billions of people always at risk. Poverty, not having enough food to eat, famine. Like, so many people have died from starvation. Now it's switched. So in one way, someone can be like, well, I guess that's good. You can make that argument that, I guess it's better to have abundance and surplus.
It reminded me of the movie, the cartoon that everybody gets so fat.
Wall-E?
It was Wall-E, right?
They're floating in the chest.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's we might end up like that.
Yeah.
We
so
might.
If you look even at individual countries like the USA, I don't know the dollar amount of how much obesity and its consequences are costing every year, but
trillions, probably.
Trillions, but it's an enormous problem, and it has other effects. It has impacts on, obviously, people's hormones. It has fertility, heart disease, cancers, like all of these things. It's not just about what people look like. It's like, this is your health. This is your body. Most men in the USA now are not even eligible to be in the military because they don't meet the basic fitness requirements. So the majority of men, over half, don't meet the basic physical requirements. So maybe in the past, like 90% of men met it. Now it's like, I don't know, 40%, 30% or something like that, because people are just so out of shape. People are eating themselves to death. The life expectancy has started to, in the USA, it started to decrease. It's been increasing all these years, all these decades, centuries. It's been increasing, except for maybe a war. And now it's flatlined and it's starting to go down. And that's a whole problem in itself. So I just find it kind of interesting how we can have problems of scarcity, and then we can fix them and overcorrect them, and then we end up with problems of abundance. Yeah, we now have too much.
Zuby, look, I'm getting how you call that, goosebumps, because podcasts are so good because, like me or you, the host, we learn a lot from the guests, right? I learn a lot from you. And you made me think about different topics just right now.
Good.
You mentioned something, for example, the society, and what is basically, I was brought up without that, right? So, but what it saved me, I was brought up around the military regime. So I went to army school, military army. So that made me more like, okay, I need to make it out. And that's why I've been married more than 15 years. Yeah. So, and in the other hand, I have our friends or cousins.
Good for you, by the way, man. That's dope.
Yeah. So I want to make the change. My kids are 10 and 5. They have their dad.
Yeah.
And I have another friends or cousins that they go both out with their parents, lovely family, but now they're divorced because they're probably their surrounds where not only the family were right, if not the society where they were built. And talking about society, I have a question for you, but let me put you in a little bit of background about what is my opinion. So I'm from a family, it's a massive family. We're more than 150 people. As I say, 12, my grandma had 12 people. I'm from the Andes, from
the mountain region.
From the mountain region. And I'm fourth generation indigenous. So yeah, in my family we have blonde people, black people, indigenous, we're all mixed out, Latinos. But back in 20 and 30 years ago, there was the indigenous that were probably getting killed, by the guerrillas in the mountains, because of the drug cartels and the army and all of that. So I lived all of that. And I remember they used to go in the streets, to create riots because they didn't have solution by the government, So, but they were the minority, indigenous in Colombia. For me, my second surname, I won't mention it because I protect my family, but my second surname is very indigenous. And when I was in high school, I was ashamed of having that surname because all my white friends, they were, like the posh guys. They say, where is it from, right? So I always feel like the minority because I was indigenous. But now when I went to the UK, the British, they could pronounce my second surname better than the Colombians.
Oh, interesting.
It's insane, right? And they didn't care because, in the UK, we're mixed. So the question right now is, the indigenous, they suffer a lot. And then after a couple of periods, their riots or their manifestation become a business, right? And I know you publicly criticize also something similar that happened in Colombia, that the Black Lives Matter, the movement. And you say it was a scam. In my opinion, also, it's a scam because I lived in Colombia from the transition of being something that was helping the indigenous to being a marketing or political campaign, right? But I want to know what led you to this conclusion as well, especially with Black Lives Matters. And how do you respond to those who might label this is too controversial for you to talk about it?
Okay. I think the first thing worth saying is that Black Lives Matter is an intentionally semantically overloaded phrase.
Wow.
If the organization had a different name, we wouldn't be having this conversation. There would be no controversy if it was just called, I don't know, the Black Revolutionary Marxists.
Okay. Wow.
Then no one would ask me, why am I criticizing them? Or why don't I support them? But because Black Lives Matter, that can refer to at least 3 different things. There's just the sentence. No organization, no movement, just the sentence. Black Lives Matter. Do I agree with that statement? Yes, of course. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Unless you're like actually, or a racist, right? Do Latino lives matter? Yes.
Yes.
Do white lives matter? Yes. Children's lives matter? Yes. Adult lives matter? Yes. Women's lives matter? Yeah. Yes. Obviously.
All of
the sentence, yes, I agree. It can also refer to the organization. It's an actual organization that is named capital B, Black, capital L, Lives, capital M, Matter. Just like there's all these other organizations that exist, it is an organization with leaders, with a hierarchy, with a corporate structure, with money coming in, money going out, expensive, like a company, nonprofit company, whatever it is, okay? I absolutely do not support and have never supported that organization. That organization is a scam. In 2025, people know that it's a scam. They know that they took millions and millions of dollars in donations. They used it to enrich themselves, to play in the stock market, to buy themselves large houses, which is why some people now say, buying large mansions is what BLM stands for. They used it to enrich themselves. They took that money. Some of it got donated to candidates in the Democratic Party in the USA, but none of it, or very little of it, if at all, went to actually helping Black people in America or fighting against police brutality or anything like that. What people probably thought they were donating to. So by definition, I'm like, that is a scam.
Yeah.
Okay. Third, you could say that Black Lives Matter could also refer to the overall movement. Let's say, maybe not a particular organization, but someone who just feels compelled to go out and speak about racial justice and they like the slogan. Maybe they've made a sign and it says Black Lives Matter on it. And they want people to know that they're against police brutality, or they don't think that, they think racism is a problem, whatever the case might be. So sentence, 100% agree, obviously. Organization, against, have been against for about 7 years at this point. Movement, generally, I think it was a net negative, but I'm sure there were some good people involved in it, and maybe there were some beneficial conversations that came from it. But overall, several years later, after the 2020 explosion, I'm not seeing a lot of tangible benefits.
The results, yeah.
So yeah, that's how I parse it out.
Okay.
But very intentionally, people conflate all these things. It's a little bit like if I'm sure maybe you yourself have had this conversation. Let me ask you a question. What do you think of feminism?
What I think of feminism?
Yeah. Do you think it's good, or overall, do you think it's been good or bad?
It's not that great. So it's not good.
Okay. So you don't think men and women should be treated equally or fairly?
Depends.
Okay. Do you think men and women should be treated equally under the law? Because, okay,
Yes.
what I'm doing is
yes,
there are people who say feminism just means that men and women should be treated fairly and equally. There will be some people who say that's all it means.
Wow.
But we know feminism doesn't just mean that.
No.
In reality, in practice, feminism is not just about, hey, we just want gender fairness and equality. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
But people switch the definition depending on what is. So if someone speaks against it, they're like, oh my gosh, you're a misogynist, you hate women, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they're talking, men are trash, down with the patriarchy, smash the, like all this stuff, And so with BLM, it's very semantically overloaded. So if you say you don't support BLM or you don't support Black Lives, what, you don't believe Black Lives Matter? Right? Oh, you hate Black people? So they shift the definition.
You hate women? Yes.
They shift the definition depending on how they want to frame things, which is a very powerful, I'd say it's quite a wicked tool, but it's quite a powerful rhetoric tool so that you can make it seem like anyone who's not with you is against you and is the enemy.
Yeah.
And what happened in 2020 in the wake of the death of George Floyd is people got so hyped up and emotional about this all and did not do any research, did not even know that this organization has existed for 5 years before 2020, approximately. This is not its first iteration at all. And I did my research those years ago. So as soon as it popped back up in 2020, I was like, yeah, this is this crap again, right? This is a scam. Because if the movement was really just about Black Lives Mattering and wanting to protect Black lives around the world or in the USA, we need to be having very different conversations. That conversation is not about the police, okay? The police are not even in the top 20 things that are killing Black people in America. So, do I think that any innocent civilian, regardless of their color, should die at the hands of the police? No.
No.
But that's not a Black issue. The police kill more white people every year than they kill Black people in America. So why don't we have that? Why don't we have a wider conversation about use of police force
weapons
on citizens? Yeah. Or on training or on the hiring practices. Cool. That would be a great conversation. But the reason they don't want to have that conversation is because people don't really want to solve the problem. No, they'd rather just, inflame the tensions along political lines, along racial lines, get people angry at each other. This side is screaming Black Lives Matter, this side is screaming all lives matter, and they think they're each other's enemies. You're saying the same phrase.
Okay.
Right? But people are too emotionally jacked up to realize how easily they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
And something I try to do across the board, whether I'm speaking on a podcast like this or on social media or speaking on a stage, is just to let people be a little more aware. I try to raise people's self-awareness and consciousness just to think a little more critically and understand the different ways that you are being played and being manipulated, because it happens all the time. There's none of us are totally immune to manipulation. To be immune to manipulation, you'd have to be immune to influence, which would mean that you'd have to basically have like zero social capacity. We all influence each other in different ways, different directions, positive, negative, sideways.
Or don't have any emotions.
Pardon?
Or don't have any emotions.
Yeah, you'd have to actually be like a sociopath to be like maybe even a psychopath to be completely impossible to manipipulate. And so there are individuals and groups out there. Obviously, there's the media. Obviously, there's politicians. Everyone fundamentally knows that, yeah, there's manipulation going on all the time. People know it kind of in the back of their mind, but they rarely think, okay, am I being manipulated? And if so, how? And what are the consequences of that? So if there's there's a big media story and all the media is trying to tell you this thing, or they want you to hate this person, or they want you to push this in this way, right? You pause and think, okay, wait, what's going on here? What are the facts? What's fact? What's opinion? Why? Sometimes something pops up all of a sudden and it's like, wait, why? The BLM thing's a fantastic example.
The Olympics.
Sorry?
The Olympics?
Oh no, the BLM.
The BLM, yeah, sorry.
It's a great example because oh gosh, or what even happened with the pandemic itself. Okay, right? All of a sudden, just in a few days or in 1 week, like there's a grand narrative, and whoa, like every newspaper and TV thing, and this person, like all of a sudden, like the machine is pushing and promoting. It's like PR. It's like pushing this certain thing. It's like, okay, when that happens, it's always worth stepping back and going, okay, hang on here. What is going on? Is there some manipulation at play? Why do they want me to fear this thing? Or why do they want me to hate this person? Or why do they, and sometimes the timing of it is a little suspicious. Okay. So how come BLM, how come every election year in the USA, every time there's a presidential election, a few months before, BLM pops up and there's some, and then they go quiet again. And then boom, another election comes, boom, right? That seems a bit,
something is happening.
Right? That seems a little convenient. And how come they only talk about these issues? As I've said, police are not even close to one of the greatest threats to Black people in America. So why is that their only focus? Why do they ignore the 99.99% of other things that Black people are dying from? But this particular one, which gets people emotional and angry and fighting each other, this is the one. Okay, promote this narrative. And then 2 weeks later, these ones are fighting these ones, and it's all politically charged. And that happens over and over and over again. And it's not new. Historically, this has happened. Just look at history and look at propaganda. And look at the way they get this group to fight this group. Like this one's against this one. And it can be along so many lines. It can be racial. It can be ethnic. It can be national. It can be religious. It can be factions within the same religion. It can be Protestant versus Catholic. It doesn't even need to be, Christian against another, like within the same things. Vaccinated versus unvaccinated. What? You managed to divide people based on whether or not someone took a shot. That is insane. Think about that.
It's insane.
That is insane. You managed to get people to hate each other based on whether or not they decided to take a certain medicine.
Yeah.
This one did. Even families. Couples divorced over it. Think of, like, you want to talk about manipulation. If it hadn't been for the promotion and the PR and all the marketing campaigns about that stuff, none of that would have ever happened. Okay? Have you ever lost a friend over a disagreement about the flu vaccine? No.
No, I haven't.
About MMR? No. About all of these dozens and dozens of vaccines that have existed since before we were born. You've never lost a friend or split up families over who took what. You don't even know. I don't know who takes flu shots, who does. I don't care. No one cared. But if you sell the narrative through the media and through like these different platforms, and you have politicians coming out and making statements, and you convince them, hey, the people who are making a different decision, they're not just bad people. They're putting your life at risk. They're putting your children's lives at risk. They're the enemy. That's what they did. They came out in 2021 and 2022, started even making policies in different countries, like these limitations, these restrictions, this segregation. And people are like, yeah, this is good. There were people who supported putting people who didn't take the shot in camps.
Wow. In
some countries, they were building, like anyone with any historical awareness, once you start building camps to put people in because they're a little different from you, you're not the good guy.
You're not the good guy.
Okay, once you're censoring people because they have a different opinion, and you're banning this and banning this because you don't like the fact that there's some dissent, then you're not standing on solid ground. And so I have despite growing up in a, relatively like a very comfortable and happy environment, I've spent a lot of time in my life just like when I look at history, I'm generally a bit less interested by what exactly happened when, and I'm more intrigued by like the psychology behind it all. Okay. So if you're looking at what happened in Nazi Germany or under communism, or I don't know the history of of Colombia, but some of the things that you were saying behind and cartels and stuff, I'm intrigued by the psychology
of the people that were behind.
Yes, the psychology of the people behind it, the people who responded to it, the people who fought against it, the people who went with it and supported it. Like, why? Because again, our DNA has not changed much. So the people in the 1930s or 1940s in Germany or in the Soviet Union or in Japan are like, they're fundamentally the same
people
as Germans or Russians or Italians or whatever, on all sides of it, like people haven't fundamentally changed. So what happened that allowed the things to take place? A much more recent example, 1994, the Rwandan genocide, which to me is one of the scariest historical events ever. It's 1994. So, just over 30 years ago. 500,000 to 1 million people were butchered.
Wow.
Mostly by their own neighbors.
Wow.
In a period of 3 months. So they managed to turn one ethnic group in the country against the other one to the point of genocide. So think of that. Up to 1 million people killed in about 100 days.
Wow.
Using the media, using the radio, people went out with their machetes and they hunted down and killed their neighbors, people they lived next to, their friends, the people they went to church with. The kids play in the same, and they went out and they murdered each other.
Wow.
This is only 1994. This is not going back to thousands and thousands of years in. And just looking at that and studying it, I think I know why people don't want to look at it, because it's so dark and gruesome and scary.
And it doesn't look real.
No, it doesn't seem real, but it's also just like, how does that happen? How can you make, almost overnight, how can you make people turn on?
That's like the movie. What is the name of the movie in America that they have? The Purge.
The Purge.
It's like The Purge.
Yes, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, and which is why, and I think the reason why those movies are sort of fascinating people is because they're not totally outside the realm of reality.
It's like Narcos is so successful. It was real, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
What they put in.
Yeah. So I think if something is completely outside the realm of reality, even like in fiction, it doesn't tend to work very well. Because even in a fictional world, the human psychology still has to be real. It still has to reflect the real human psychology. Otherwise, it kind of breaks the story. If it's like, wait, no one would do that, then it doesn't really work. But with something like The Purge, which is again very dark, I would certainly like to think that I would like to believe that The Purge is totally unrealistic. I would like to believe that.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that if you did this, there is no way on earth that people would do that. But I don't know.
It might happen.
I'm like, some people probably would.
But you have, for example, in the 90s, you have Pablo Escobar. You thought he was not going to do what he did, and he killed hundreds and thousands of people for power.
Yeah.
And then after 25 years, Netflix, Amazon made him a hero to get views. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So talking about how to understand.
Sorry, I'm not even trying to get so dark here, but
no, but something that's
warning, really.
Something that's quite bright to understand people in Colombia or how people think. Just read Gabriel Garcia Marquez and 100 Years of Solitude. He talk about the magic realism.
I've seen the show.
How Colombians think. So those books it's how we think. It's totally insane. He got the Nobel Prize for that. So I really respect it. Now, let's talk about something that is kind of magic realism. And now we're going all the way back to the beginning of the podcast. We talk about Elon. We have been talking about a lot of stuff. But now let's dig into crypto.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Because you are obviously a crypto OG, right?
Bitcoin
Maxi. the last 3 days, obviously, everybody's been talking about the market, right? The market, the tariff, Trump. He said he was going to help us. Now the market is down 80%, 90%. Memes are dying. But we deeply know Bitcoin is here to help this, right? So inflation, tariff, is everything. Bitcoin is it can combat all of this in one go. So obviously, Bitcoin is the new financial freedom, is limited. You cannot print more than 21 million. But you have a very good comparison that you draw parallel between Bitcoin potential impact on the financial system and the internet revolution of information. So let's elaborate this comparison and what you mean for the average person to explain what does it mean between Bitcoin potential impact on financial system and the internet revolution of information, because they go parallel, right?
Yeah, well, I think, Andres, before we started rolling, we were talking about something which is unique to our generation.
Yeah.
Essentially, which is that we both have grown up to see the world pre-internet and pre-smartphone
VHS,
and
cassettes.
Then after, right? So we've kind of had like about half of our lives without a lot of this stuff being ubiquitous and very popular, and the other half with it. And we are the last generation that's going to be able to say that. So we remember the world pre-internet, pre-mobile phones, pre-smartphones. We saw the rise of email, the rise of Amazon, and then the rise of the Facebooks and YouTubes. And we've lived through all of this. So you and I can probably remember when people thought the internet was a fad.
It was a scam.
They thought it was pointless.
Yeah.
They thought that, what's the point of having an email address even? I remember I joined Facebook 2004.
Wow.
21 years ago.
yes.
21 years ago. In 2004, how were people talking about Facebook?
No.
What the heck is this? What's the point?
Were you playing the video games in the bottom right? Remember there was like a farm.
Oh, I was on it before that.
And zombies and all of that.
That was like 2008, 2009.
2008,
that's like later. Yeah, I was on. I'm like one of the first.
Wow.
So I've seen all these different iterations of it. And my point is, with all of these new technologies, whether you're talking email addresses, the internet itself, normal mobile phones, smartphones, each individual social media platform, Amazon.com. I remember when people thought Amazon was what's the point? Who the heck is going to buy books online?
Yeah.
This is going to fail. Okay. We remember when Tesla, who the heck wants an electric car? This is going to fail. Why would anyone buy an electric car? The way people used to talk about the internet, the way people used to talk about email, used to talk about smartphones, used to talk about social media, it's the same way the typical person talks about Bitcoin right now. It's too slow. Nobody uses it. What's the point? This isn't going to work. I don't get it. Most people are very slow with technology. They don't get it until everybody else does. And so to me, Bitcoin is like where the internet was. I don't even want to put an exact.
1998.
Yeah, where it's there and people have heard about it.
With the modem.
Maybe most people have heard about it.
When
was
the first time that you have internet, for example?
Oh gosh.
What year? 1999?
What year? I want to say a bit earlier, I think. Maybe around 97 or so.
Wow, with the modem, right?
Yeah.
So you think we're in that moment right now with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Where most people have heard of it, right? If you said the internet to most people in 1999, I think they have heard of the internet. Maybe they're not connected. Maybe they don't know what it is or the point of it, or they think it's very slow, very clunky. It doesn't work very well. I think that's basically where we are with Bitcoin.
Wow.
I think most people have heard about Bitcoin. I'd say over 50% of people have probably heard. If you say the word Bitcoin, it's not the first time they're hearing the word.
So do you think we will need another 25 years to get there?
No, it won't take that long. Right now, according to the best estimates, about 3 to 4% of the world's population owns any Bitcoin at all. So 97% of people are on 0.0000. They have nothing. Nothing.
97% of people don't have any Bitcoin. No, not even one Satoshi.
Nothing.
Oh,
97% of people have no Satoshis.
Wow.
3% 3-4% do. Just something, right? I'm not saying have a good amount, but 3 or 4% have anything.
Because there's a bunch of people in crypto that don't have Bitcoin. I bet there are a bunch of users in centralized exchanges that don't have Bitcoin.
Yeah, and most people don't have any crypto whatsoever.
Wow.
Okay, so we're at the point where most people have heard of it, and they don't understand it. Even most people in crypto don't understand Bitcoin. Even people who are very intelligent and very successful in many other areas, they don't get it. But these are the same people who many times they didn't get Amazon, they didn't get Facebook, they didn't get Tesla.
And they're using those services now.
Yeah, of course they're using them now, but it's the S curve, right? It's the adoption curve.
Yeah.
So I think that Bitcoin is such a good technology and such a good form of money that it is, to me, barring some insane black swan event, to me, it's almost inevitable that Bitcoin is going to go through the same adoption curve. And there's going to be a point where it happens very, very quickly. And I could see a few things that become the catalyst for that happening. We've already, how long have you been in this space?
2016 of May.
Okay. So about 8 years.
Yeah.
About 8 years, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Or approaching 9, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. So in that time, you have seen a gigantic shift.
Yeah, a lot.
From 2016, 2017 to now, not just in the price. So you've seen the price go from hundreds to 100,000.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right? And that's with fewer than 3% of people having any. You've already seen more than, that's like, you've seen at least 100x in the price of Bitcoin in under a decade.
Yes, it is true.
Yes, you've seen 100x. Okay. And even in terms of the sentiment around it, it's gone from something that is just like
BlackRock hated and didn't think about it.
Yeah, now you're seeing nations
buying Bitcoin,
buying it,
it's
mining
crazy.
it, creating policies around it. We saw El Salvador make it legal tender. You're seeing USA, the most powerful and dominant country in the entire world, talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve. You saw the ETFs last year, right? So it's already gone. Let's say in the past decade, it's already gone from like a very niche, super weird internet thing that almost no one has heard of to the most valuable currency in the world in terms of like nominal value. And it's still at the point where it's like, it's barely gotten started. It's barely gotten started. So unless, like I said, there can be a black swan, maybe there's something that like fundamentally breaks Bitcoin. It hasn't, for the past 15 or so years, like it's just been ticking along block after block, never been hacked, no massive issues in terms of Bitcoin itself. And I believe it's going to continue on ticking that way. But barring some like crazy thing that fundamentally changes its value proposition, I think it's just inevitable. So right now, the total market cap of Bitcoin as we speak right now is probably, I don't know, between 1.5, 1.7 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man, I wish I knew the numbers off the top of my head. Okay, let's take gold. Gold is about between 20 and 25 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So for Bitcoin, just to reach the market cap of gold, we're talking about another, let's say 18 to
20x.
Let's say like a 17, 18, 20x from where it is right now.
Okay.
Just to reach gold.
And then
gold is not the biggest.
I think it's Nvidia, right? Nvidia?
Yeah, Nvidia.
Or Amazon.
Oh, like the highest market cap company?
Yeah.
I don't think it's Amazon. It might be Nvidia or Apple or Saudi Aramco.
Apple
there's a couple that I think are over 2 trillion.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know what the number of total global assets or real estate is or something, but it's in the hundreds and hundreds of trillions.
The real estate is the biggest, yeah.
I think real estate, 300 trillion.
Yeah.
I don't want to quote numbers.
But it's trillions and trillions.
Hundreds of trillions.
Yeah.
Hundreds of trillions. So we're talking about an asset which right now is under 2 trillion.
And
we're talking about a global market of money and assets of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trillions. So I think it is entirely realistic over the course of the upcoming decades, especially look, everything is shifting in our lives. We've seen so many things shift from physical to digital.
Yeah.
Music, videos, every form of entertainment, photos. We've seen it all shift physical to digital. Think of your kids and think of kids younger than them. do you think it's going to make more sense to them when they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s to be holding bricks of gold?
No.
Or a digital currency that's rarer than gold and which is easily storable, transportable, unhackable. To me, it's as obvious as them using social media and smartphones and whatever else comes down the line. They're going to be AI natives. Maybe we're like AI for them even is going to be like
obsolete today. Yeah.
Well, I just mean it's going to be used. They're not even
like a normal day.
Yeah, they're not. So, okay, if you took the internet away right now, if you switched off the internet, most people would essentially stop functioning.
Yeah.
Apart from people who are like really living rural and they're farmers, or like the modern person, whether they're in South Korea or England or Dubai, is like, even if you work for a company, like you can't do anything. You can't do anything. And most people still don't know what the internet is.
Wow.
How many people could actually explain the internet? How does the internet work? Where is it? What? Almost nobody. But we all use it. Everyone uses it.
Yeah.
Everyone uses it. You know what it is on a basic level. You don't know where it is, who owns it. Like, no, kind of, like Bitcoin, right? Like, what exactly is it? Where is it? Like, it's decentralized. It's not in one place. There's no bank. There's no central bank. It's fully decentralized. So when I say that I think Bitcoin will do for money what the internet has done for information is, I can see a future where, of course, you still have the enthusiasts and you have investors and you have speculators and you have the people who are in the markets, right? But you'll have people using Bitcoin on a daily basis without even needing to know what it is. In the same way, most people don't understand the money system we have now.
So people use like Apple Pay, debit card. They don't need to understand how it works.
Yeah, even when we talk of like money printing, we imagine that in our brain as, just like a big machine that's literally physically making the machine. That's not what most money printing is. It's digital.
Yeah.
Right? It's digital. It's most of the money already is not physical notes.
You know that all the money that we have within my phone. I think I have money in my bank. You don't. And I don't have money. I don't.
Or small percentage of it.
But I don't have. Yeah. Well, literally, I don't have any money because I'm bullish in crypto. But if I have any money, let's say $1,000 in my bank account, it's not there.
No, maybe you have 100.
Maybe I have.
And then they've like the other.
And then they always want stock, shares, bonds in crypto. Maybe they put my money in Bitcoin, and I don't know.
Maybe so. But yeah, I mean, your fractional reserve banking is a whole other rabbit hole. But yeah, I just think I think if you've been in the crypto space or the Bitcoin space for a while, let's say over 5 years, and by default, you mostly probably, you know tons of other people who are also in it. So you can think that it's way more popular and much better known and much better understood than it is. But then when I tell you that 97% of people have nothing, have no Satoshis, you're like, oh, it's early. It's early. Even if it's like more than 10 years in, it's like this thing has barely started. It's so insanely undervalued. And yes, for the time being, Bitcoin is very volatile when compared to when priced in a fiat currency, right? So if you're comparing, the BTC price in pounds, dollars, euros, whatever, it fluctuates a lot. Overall, massive upward trend. Over the course of a 4 or 5 year time frame, everything keeps getting cheaper in Bitcoin. Cars, houses, watches, it all keeps getting cheaper. Yeah. And I believe it's going to continue going that way, while everything is becoming more and more expensive in fiat, whether you're holding pesos or dollars or naira or lira, euro, it doesn't matter. Everything keeps in nominal value. It keeps seeming like it's going up because all those currencies are losing value every single day. The value of a dollar. Think of the US dollar. The US dollar and the British pound and maybe the Swiss franc are generally considered the best of fiat currencies. The most reliable, the most trusted, the most stable, the ones that, certainly dollars, the ones that people hold in reserve. The US dollar has lost over 90%. It's lost about 90% of its, I believe over 90% of its purchasing power in the last 100 years.
It's crazy, right?
Even just in the last few years, it's lost a lot. And that's the best. Meanwhile, what has happened with Bitcoin? We've already said from 2006, you could buy one Bitcoin for under $1,000. Now, in the crash that's freaking everyone out, you want one Bitcoin? Okay, cool. That's over 75 grand.
Think of that. It's crazy.
And people are panicking and freaking out. It's over. I'm like, bro, 10
Chill.
years ago. 10 years. Do you remember when it hit 20,000 in 2017?
It was massive.
It was insane. So right now it's about 4 times higher.
And the thing is freaking out. No, I want to sell it. I was in an event yesterday, and I have a bunch of people. Actually in Tech Tuesday, right?
Okay,
so
yeah.
I visit Tech Tuesday after 7 weeks. I haven't been. And Gordon put me in the microphone. I was talking what I do. I have 7 people coming to me. Andres, you're in crypto. Blah, blah. Shall I sell?
It's over.
And I say, wait. What do you have? I have this. Do you have Bitcoin? No.
Yeah,
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
With that you just have. Just move it. Now, talking about somebody that is pro-crypto, very bullish, and somebody that you and me will like, President Trump.
Okay.
You know? I read in his book, How to Become a Billionaire. It's an old book, but I love the book.
Yeah.
Now, he obviously doing some... I admire him because he's 79. I don't know how he is. He's nearly 80.
Yeah.
Keep going. We were talking about him before.
80 next year.
Yeah, we were talking about him before we jump in the podcast. He jumped 60 days. Everything changed. You know, everybody freaking out. Crypto brothers are panicking, but the real OGs are not panicking. They know what is in the agenda coming.
Yeah.
And especially after taxes on 15th of April. And then we have the whole year ahead. We have President Trump for the next 3 years and 10 months.
Yes.
Hopefully. What are your views about what's happening right now? Because everybody's freaking out, but today, what day is today? 9th of April, 2025.
9th of April, you mean?
9th of April, 2025 today. People are freaking out, but you are chill, you are cool, you're not freaking out. What are your thoughts about, okay, that's going back all the way to the beginning of the podcast, about Trump doing all of this, and how you see the future of crypto within the next 6 months? Because 6 months, it seems long, but it's not in crypto.
No.
Anything can change.
Of course. So first question is
Trump coming to power and making all this.
All the changes,
all the price down.
All the stuff, yeah. My opinion is I'm going to wait and see. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on tariffs and all of this stuff. Obviously, in the short term, there's a lot of pain. Is it going to keep going that way? And a few years from now, we look back at this moment and we're like, that was a stupid decision. Or will we look back and be like, hey, that was a little painful short term, but things are much better now. I don't know I don't have the insight and knowledge to know what's going to happen there. So I won't give an answer. In terms of the next 6 months in crypto, I think as people have probably already observed, I very much separate Bitcoin from everything else.
Yeah.
Everything else is, if you actually denominate in Bitcoin, everything else has been consistently losing value against it and continues to. So let's take the second most popular, second biggest
Ethereum
crypto after Bitcoin. Okay. So Ethereum in 2017, 2018, late 2017, early 2018, I remember very specifically 1 ETH it was 10 ETH to 1 Bitcoin. One ETH was 0.1 Bitcoin. You remember?
Okay.
So
yes.
an ETH was worth 10% of 1 Bitcoin. Now, ETH is worth about 2% of 1 Bitcoin. So forget about the dollar value for a moment, which also hasn't gone back to its all-time high. But if you actually denominate in Bitcoin terms,
all the altcoins,
they all lose against Bitcoin.
That's what people need to think.
People need to understand this, because if like just buying and holding Bitcoin, it's not fancy, it's not exciting, it's not right.
Not DeFi solution. It's nothing like that.
It doesn't get your dopamine hyped. So when people say that Bitcoin is digital gold, like that's not a perfect analogy, but it's pretty close, because there are lots of other metals. And there have been for thousands of years.
But it's only one gold.
And there's many metals that for certain purposes are better than gold. You're not going to build this microphone out of gold. You're not going to make a
one day
building.
we might be you
but
with
like no, like steel makes you need steel, iron, copper, lead, aluminum, like for different purposes.
Yeah.
There's many metals that are better, quote unquote, than gold for certain things. There's faster blockchains than Bitcoin.
Yes.
There's things that are more flexible. There's things that for day-to-day payments it might even make more sense, much faster transactions and throughput and so on. But there's only Bitcoin. So if people want to play in the altcoin casino, and most people, even most Bitcoin maximalists at some point have played in the altcoin casino, but the reason why over time people tend to come back in and converge on just like, oh, okay, every time I do something outside Bitcoin, I'm losing
money
in Bitcoin terms. Maybe even if you might make a flip and make some dollars, but if you actually price everything in Bitcoin outside of very small certain windows, you find, actually, I've lost every single time. If you sell your Bitcoin for this one and then you convert back to, you've lost in Bitcoin in like all the time. And it's even amazing that most people in the crypto space, this hasn't clicked for them. Because when you actually look at it, you're just like, holy crap. Like you can go on CoinMarketCap or any of these other things, okay? Change the denomination
to Bitcoin
from USD or pound, change it to Bitcoin and look at the charts. Look at the charts.
Bitcoin overperform everybody.
They all the charts are down. Down. Bitcoin is destroying everything over the past 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. It's destroying everything. So I'm not giving financial advice, but it's like Bitcoin is it's the one. So I understand that people like, this person loves this one, this person loves this one, whatever. Look, people's money, they can do whatever they want with it. But in terms of like okay, let me put it this way. If I fell into a coma tomorrow and I knew I wasn't going to wake up for 10 or 15 years, I wouldn't worry about my Bitcoin stack. In fact, I'd be quite excited to see. I'd be quite excited to see what people are willing to pay for it once I wake up out of that coma. If I were holding anything else in that market out of those 80,000, 100,000 cryptos or whatever, I would be freaking out. Because the probability that they're going to be at like zero or close to it would be extraordinarily high. And we've even seen this. You got in 2016. Look at what the top 50 was, or the top 100 in 2016. Or look at the top 100 even in 2018. How many of them are even still there?
They're not there.
Which is the one that hasn't moved?
Bitcoin.
Right? It's just there, just chilling at the top forever. Yes, it's dollar value changes, but we all good?
All good, yeah.
Yeah.
5 minutes. Yeah, no, he's going to check the cameras.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. So again, everybody, please do your own research. But the conclusions that I'm drawing here, I'm not the first one to say them or to state them. But yeah, I think that, and I also understand the desire to play in the altcoin casino, because with Bitcoin, even where it's at now, whether it's 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 100,000. It looks, there's something called oh my gosh, what's the proper term? There's a word for this bias, unit bias, I think. I think it's called a unit bias, which is, as human beings, as animals, we see the number, let's say Bitcoin is at 80,000 or even at $100,000, $100,000 for one Bitcoin. That huge number signals to your brain, it's too late. I can't afford it.
It's not too late.
Oh, I can buy a lot, but I can buy lots of Doge.
I
can buy lots of
Solana.
I can buy lots of, well, even Solana might be, start being a little high, right? Someone's like, $200, like maybe So there's a unit bias, which makes people think, the train has already run. We've already said in the past decade, Bitcoin's done 100x. So when I tell someone, Bitcoin can do another 100x, even people who are in the space are like, what? $10 million Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah. Don't think of it in the number. Think of it in market cap. Think of it in market cap. Do you think Bitcoin can reach a $20 trillion market cap? Same as gold.
It will.
Less than gold.
So it will be like that $1.5 million per Bitcoin.
Yeah. Wait, is my math? Yeah. So, so that would take it to, my bad. No, I got my math offside. That would take it to 1 million.
Okay.
20 trillion market cap would take it to about $1 million per Bitcoin.
That would be so nice.
Okay. But we already said the global market cap is in the hundreds of trillions.
Wow.
So why does it have to stop at 20 trillion? Why couldn't Bitcoin reach a 50 trillion or 100 trillion, perhaps even one day a 200 trillion market cap? I don't know. I'm not making any guarantees or anything, but it has the mathematically and logically, it's entirely possible for Bitcoin to reach a $10 million. The question is, what's $10 million going to be worth?
Probably
right?
not much.
Because of inflation, right? $10 million, as we're talking about it now, is not going to be the same.
You cannot buy a house
or 100. Yeah, no.
You might be.
I'm sure you'll be able to buy a house for that, but it's not going to be the same. In the same way, right now, if someone says they earn $100,000 a year, to most people, that's like that's a very good salary. You know, by the time our children are 40, earning $100,000 a year might just put you like on the poverty line because of inflation, because of devaluation. So
how much do you think somebody will need by 2040? How many Bitcoins to be wealthy?
I mean, already, if you have 0.1, you're better off than the average person.
Wow.
Already, right now. Right now, if you have 0.1 Bitcoin, you have more savings than the average person.
So in the future will be a bunch of Bitcoiners, people that have one Bitcoin. Maybe they are better off.
I mean, it's going to become like the ability to even own one Bitcoin, it's already out of the reach of most people.
It is, yeah.
It's already out of the reach of most people. And, you know, what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the implications of that are. But look, I think partly due to the unit bias thing I was talking about, in the future, people will talk in sats, not in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin will be just worth too much. Like,
or in Satoshis.
People talk in Satoshis, right? Because already right now, if you're talking again, if you're explaining Bitcoin to someone completely new, like a lot of people don't even know that it's divisible. Okay,
so they don't know. They
right?
Think I don't have $70,000 to buy.
I can't buy Bitcoin. I don't have I don't have 75K kicking around, and it's like, no, you don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. So again, all of these things are as frustrating as these conversations can be, especially if you've had them like dozens and dozens or hundreds of times. You're trying to say something online and you're getting the same talking points from 2017 of people saying the same things. It's all an indicator again of just how early everything is. Even the average person who is an investor, most people have no investments. Most people are not in the stock market at all. Okay. But even of the people who are, a very, very small percentage of them even have, let alone understand Bitcoin. There are people who run some of the biggest corporations in this world and countries who don't understand Bitcoin. I don't think Trump understands Bitcoin.
He probably doesn't.
If he did, I don't think he'd be launching meme coins, and I don't think he'd be talking like about crypto more broadly. I don't think that I think he's intrigued by it and has some vague understanding, but I don't even think that he himself, I think of all the presidents outside of Bukele, maybe he understands it the best. But I think Nayib Bukele of El Salvador is the only world leader who I think actually understands Bitcoin. The rest of them do not. And so, yeah, like, gosh, I'm intrigued to see where we're going to be a few decades from now.
Zuby, I have an invitation for you.
Yeah.
To do a part 2. But listen to this. I'm doing a set of meetups called Web3 meetups in the 54th floor in a business tower looking at the Palm. And I want to invite Bitcoin Maxis in 2 weeks. Only Bitcoin Maxis. I don't want to talk about Solana centralization. And I would love to invite you there.
Okay.
And then we just concentrate to talk about Bitcoin. I normally put like 100 to 120 people, but it's only focus for people to understand how crypto works. Okay. I would like to invite you.
Crypto or Bitcoin?
Only Bitcoin.
Okay.
We only talk about Bitcoin that day.
Okay.
And then I have only one more question for you because I think that this is very important so people understand Zuby more deep. You have 2 books.
Yeah.
But one that fascinated me is the book about for kids.
Yeah.
For kids.
Kids book.
Because, CC also, he's the founder of Binance. He's been developing an app called Giggles.
Okay.
That's for kids as well. And I have a kids, so I have spent a bunch of money in books. I probably should spend more than one Bitcoin in books right now. Tell us about that book and why it was so important for you.
Yeah, sure. So my book is called The Candy Calamity. I released it in, I think, 2022, if I remember correctly. It's a collaboration with a company in Texas called Brave Books. They're a children's book company. They released a series of books written by different authors. And the general topic of the book is about the importance of self-control and taking care of your body. So in 2019, I released a fitness book for adults called Strong Advice, Zuby's Guide to Fitness for Everybody. And that helped a lot of people to improve their nutrition and training and get in better shape. I've had a huge number of positive reviews and positive testimonials from that. And so health and fitness is a topic that's very, very close to my heart. Anyone who's listening can see there's quite a few issues that I'm passionate about, but health and fitness is a major one. And so I wanted to write about that. And the whole story rhymes, by the way. So being a rapper as well, it was fun to create an entire story for children that rhymes. But the message is just about the importance of looking after your body, why that's important to make good food decisions and to exercise. It's not like in-depth or detailed or something like that. It's not, here's a nutrition guide, or it's not like that. It's just a fun story. But I think it has a positive message. And I have a lot of fans and followers and friends with children who have bought it for their kids and they like it and they're enjoying it. So I'm glad that it was able to
made it
fulfill its mission. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to give you a present off camera. I'm going to give you a book that's rhymed for kids.
Okay.
If you ever one day have a kid, it's about a volcano. So it rhymes. Okay. We're going to the volcano. And I thought it was so stupid at the beginning. And the more I was reading it to my kids, it just changed. I love that book. I will give it. I will buy one for you and give it to you, and you understand why. Okay. And of course, I will get one from your book to give it to my kids.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
But Zuby, thank you so much. Muchas gracias. That was an epic conversation, and thank you so much for all the crypto G's, Mr. Zuby, the legend, author, rapper. The next one we will have him rapping here in Spanish. Who knows?
Who knows?
Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye bye.